What's up, guys? So today, as promised, I will be doing the tutorial for the F-18 Hornet ACM systems, or air combat maneuvering. Basically what that mode is a system where, let's say you're engaged in some sort of dogfight with somebody, and they're doing all these turns around you and you're trying to keep a visual on them. You don't want to be sticking your head down here and looking at this screen as you're trying to dogfight and lock them up, right? That's just ridiculous. You would never be able to lock them up. Basically, ACM mode is the close combat modes or sensor modes for the F-18 Hornet that would allow you to lock up a target at close range using basically only your heads-up display here, which is where you would be looking at a dogfight anyway. Okay, so that's what ACM mode is and how you would be using it. Let's go ahead and get started, guys. All right. Okay, guys, so during the tutorial I will be speaking a lot about sensor control switch, forward, aft, left, right. Okay, this is the controls that you need to have mapped to something. Okay, these are the defaults right here, obviously. I highly suggest mapping these to your HOTAS. And just note that every time I'm talking about sensor control switch forward, left, right, aft, these are the controls I'm talking about. Okay, these are your ACM controls right here. Okay. So since we're going to be talking a little bit about bore mode, I thought it would be good to just explain it for anyone that doesn't know. Bore mode is basically like this here. The shaft of the missile is the bore, and you have this little seeker head in the very front, and it's looking straight ahead. All right, and basically this circle is what you're going to be seeing on your HUD. Okay, it's just a bore sight basically showing you exactly where the missile's looking, and when you're pointing that bore in your HUD at a target, you're essentially pointing this seeker head of the missile onto the target that you're trying to lock up. Okay, and when you uncage the missile, you're basically freeing that seeker up and it's free to look around. Okay, so that's just a quick look at the bore sight and basically what it is. All right. Okay, so this is a flowchart that I made before we get started. It's just a way to break it down how you would enter different modes before we actually get into the plane, and I can show you each mode. This is a good way to just break it down, and then we'll have a look in the plane. I'll show it to you at the end again because it'll make more sense to you once you've actually seen the modes. Okay. So the first thing for air combat maneuvering modes, the first thing we want to do is have a weapon selection. Okay, you want to select a weapon, an AIM-9, an AIM-7, an AMRAAM, whatever it is that you want. I didn't put AMRAAM here because we don't have them yet, but we will later. And once you have your weapon selected, you can do one of two things, right? You can go into bore or gun acquisition mode, or you can enter automatic acquisition mode. This mode, automatic acquisition, is technically not an air combat maneuvering mode, but I just put it here because there's really nowhere else to talk about it. It doesn't currently work. It's not implemented due to the early access, but I can show you how it still works in the Hornet. Okay, so that's for this one. Or you could choose bore gun acquisition mode. All right, bore or gun acquisition mode. These are two different modes. And from within this mode, you could enter vertical and wide angle acquisition. Okay. The important thing to note with this is that you cannot enter vertical and wide acquisition mode through automatic acquisition mode. Okay. Once you select your weapon and you enter this mode, that's it. You're done. This is your pathway. Okay. You will lock up your target, and that's it. If you make a weapon selection and then come to bore mode, you can then enter wide and vertical acquisition modes. We'll talk about what these are in the plane. Or alternatively, instead of bore mode, you could select gun acquisition, and you could once again enter a vertical and wide acquisition through gun acquisition. Okay. I know this sounds confusing right now. It'll make more sense as soon as we go into the Hornet. All right. The other thing I wanted to note is that vertical and acquisition mode, once you're here, So let's say you went to bore, you selected your weapon, you went to aim 7, let's say, and then you went to bore acquisition mode, and then you went to vertical acquisition. You're now free to switch between vertical and wide acquisition as you please in this mode. You don't have, let's say you went to vertical acquisition, you don't have to come back to weapon select, go bore again in order to get to wide. Okay, you can just switch between the two right here. All right. I think that about sums it up. The only other thing I want to talk about here is that everything under air combat maneuvering, this pathway here, everything here is 10 nautical miles. You have to be within 10 nautical miles for all of these to work, with the exception of vertical acquisition, which is 5 nautical miles. Okay, any closer, any farther than 5 nautical miles, vertical acquisition will not work, and everything else is 10 nautical miles. Okay. AACQ is not subject to those rules, and we'll talk about that in a second. All right, guys, so let's get started. All right, guys, so you had a chance to look at the flow chart that shows you how to get into these different modes. Now I'm going to demonstrate that, and towards the end of the video, if you're interested, I can show you some examples of locking targets up with these different modes. Okay. So the first thing we can talk about, the first mode, we'll do the automatic acquisition mode. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, as we discussed on that flow chart, is I'm going to select a weapon. I'm going to pick an aim 7. There it is. I have aim 7 selected. Next, I'm going to press sensor control switch right. Okay. And you can see on my HUD there, it shows a little AACQ. That's automatic acquisition. And that's the mode we're currently in. Okay, now, as I kind of discussed in the flowchart, this mode is not technically an ACM. It's not an air combat maneuvering mode. It's still a range while scan mode. And you can see that because when you look at this radar down here, you can see it still says RWS, or range while scan. Okay, and you can see at the top there it says AACQ. All right, so we are currently in automatic acquisition mode. So basically what this is you would just point it at a target and it would just lock it up automatically. Okay, because it's not an air combat maneuvering mode, it's not limited to the 5 or 10 nautical mile range. The range at which this will pick up a target is the range that you set your display to. Okay, your 40 mile range that you have set up here. You can go 80, 160, 510, whatever. Okay, that is the range at which this thing will try to pick up a target randomly at. Okay, now its ability to just automatically pick up a target is both its greatest strength and its greatest weakness. Okay, it's great for a dogfight scenario if you know there's no friendlies in the area, or you know that there's only a hostile in front of you. This is a great mode to use. But if you're in a situation where there's a lot of friendlies around and you don't know where the hostiles are and you're using this mode, you could possibly buddy spike, which means, you know, luck up a friendly. So you got to be careful with this mode. Okay, it's kind of hard to aim and pick up exactly what you want if you don't know exactly where your target is and it's not isolated. Okay, this mode unfortunately does not currently work. As far as I know, I have never seen somebody lock anything up with this mode, and I have also not been able to do it. So I believe it's one of those features that's still in the works with early access. So it doesn't currently work, but when it does work, that's how it works. Okay, what we just talked about. All right, so in order to exit this mode, I found the easiest way is to just go back to guns and then go back to aim 7. Okay, so now we've exited that. We're back to the weapon select as I selected the weapons, and now we want to go into bore acquisition mode. Okay, to do that, I will press sensor control switch forward. And you see that little dashed circle come up on the front of my HUD there. That is bore sight acquisition mode. So if I just put a target into that dashed circle, it would automatically lock them up. Okay. Anything outside of that dashed circle will not get locked up. All right. We talked a little bit about what bore sight is, and that's how it works. Okay, so you put a target inside of that. Think of this mode as kind of like the sniper of the F-18. It allows you to very accurately pick off the target that you're looking for. Okay, so if you're flying, let's say you have a friendly wingman in front of you, and then in front of him is an enemy hostile, and you want that hostile, and you want to be sure that you're not locking up your wingman, this is the mode you would use, and you would point that bore sight right at the enemy target, and it would lock him up. Okay, I believe this range is also limited to 10 nautical miles. Okay, let's look down here at the radar screen. You can see now that at the top it says ACM, or Air Combat Maneuvering. Okay, and you can see that the RWS is gone as well. So we are no longer in range while scan mode, we are in Air Combat Maneuvering. Okay, so that is the bore sight mode. Now, as we talked about, it's through this mode that you can get into vertical and wide acquisition. Okay, so now that I'm in bore mode, I can go vertical acquisition. I'm going to do that by going sensor control switch aft or back, and that is vertical acquisition mode. This mode goes something like 49 degrees up and minus 13 degrees down. I mean, none of that really matters to us. Let's just keep it simple. Just know it goes really high up and really low down. All right, so basically all you would be doing is placing the target in the middle of these two dashed lines, and the plane would automatically lock him up. This is really good for a dogfighting scenario. If you're trying to do a lead pursuit or a lag pursuit on a target, you would be using this mode, because you're not necessarily going to always have him right in your HUD, right? He's going to be a little bit forward, a little bit back. This is a good mode to try to lock him up with. Okay. Now, I can go directly from this mode into wide acquisition. Okay, and I did that. What you just saw there, we went to wide acquisition mode. I did that by doing sensor control switch left. Okay, now I'm just going to do it again from the very beginning. I'm going to go back to the AIM-7. We're going to go bore sight, and we're going to go sensor control switch left, and I have wide acquisition. Okay. Now, once I'm in bore acquisition mode, I can freely change between vertical and wide acquisition. Okay, you don't have to necessarily go back to weapon select and then do it again all the way up the pathway to get to wide acquisition if you're in vertical. Once you're in that mode, you can freely switch between vertical and wide acquisition. Okay, so this is wide acquisition mode. Currently, you can't slew it, but I believe one of the features that will be implemented later is you'll be able to uncage this by pressing the C button, and you'll be able to move the wide box around. So basically just think of this as a big box in front of your plane, like that image that's showing you right there. Imagine a box like that in front of your plane, and it's scanning from left to right, trying to pick up targets that are to your sides. All right, and look down here. You can see we're still in ACM mode, and the range at which the wide acquisition is currently functioning is 60 degrees. You can actually change the range of its scan by changing the field of view of the radar. So I can go from 60 degrees, I can go 80 degree wide scans, or I can do 140 degree wide scans. All right. You can also do 20, 40, but I don't really understand why you would, right? You're in wide acquisition mode. I don't know why you're scanning 20, 40 degrees. It doesn't really make sense. I would say no less than 60 in order to make this mode viable. Okay. So that is wide acquisition mode. We did vertical acquisition mode. Now I'm going to show you, because there was another way to come into these modes, right? There was through the bore mode, and then there's through gun acquisition mode. So I will now, I'm just going to pretend like I disarmed everything. Okay, so I'm going to go weapon select, and I got an aim 7. From here, I'm going to select guns. I don't have to come to aim 7. I'm just going to do that for now. So let's say I was doing all this bore mode stuff. So I got bore mode. I went, vertical acquisition. I went wide angle acquisition, and then I was like, okay, I just want to go guns on this guy. Okay, what I'm going to do is just, instead of aim 7, I'm just going to select guns. Okay, so now we're in guns. And let's say I was engaged in a dogfight, and I would say, okay, I'm looking for the gun sight to lock up the target. I want vertical acquisition lock. Okay, so from inside this gun mode, I could go sensor select switch aft, and I could get vertical. Okay, vertical acquisition with gun mode. So I'm no longer using an aim 7. All right. Altitude. Or alternatively, I could go right from within guns. I can change from vertical acquisition to wide angle acquisition by pressing sensor control switch left. All right. So again, it's just like that flow chart, right? I went first bore sight and then vertical and wide acquisition. Or I could go gun and then go vertical and wide acquisition. Okay. And look, when we talk about bore sight, it's not necessarily limited to the aim 7. You can also do it through a Sidewinder. Okay, it doesn't matter what kind of missile you're using. Like here, I'm on Sidewinder right now, right? But I'm in the bore mode of the Sidewinder, so you can see it's right in the middle there. That is the bore mode of the Sidewinder. I'm now going to go vertical acquisition. Oh, sorry, there you go. That is bore mode acquisition of the Sidewinder. And then from here, I can go, just like the aim 7, I can go vertical or I can go wide range acquisition. Okay, so I just did that with the Sidewinder. So just like the aim 7, you got to go bore mode first and then wide and vertical. Okay, so that about covers it in terms of our ACM modes. Oh, and the other thing to mention is, which I think I mentioned in the flowchart, but the vertical acquisition that we're looking at right here, vertical acquisition, this is only not accurate, but it's only functional at 5 nautical miles or less. All right, so if you're trying to lock up a target that's at 6 nautical miles with vertical acquisition, it's not going to be able to lock them up. Okay, it's not going to happen. Whereas for wide angle acquisition, you can lock up a target at 10 nautical miles, no more than 10. All right, so that is the various ACM modes of the F-18 Hornet. Let's come back. If you're still interested, I can do a couple of examples of locking targets up. All right, I'll be right back. All right, guys, so we're back here. I have off in front of us your friendly neighborhood aleutian 78, and that is a friendly Hornet to the left. Okay, we're just going to practice our locking on this aleutian 78 here. All right, so I'm going to select my weapon. I'm going to go aim 7. There it is. And then I'm going to go aim 7 bore acquisition mode by going sensor control switch forward. And you see I got my bore acquisition indicator right there. Now look, I have the aleutian 78 inside the circle, but not inside the bore acquisition. Okay, and you can see the plane's not locking it up. Once I move the aleutian 78 into this dashed circle, it locks him up. See that? Okay, so now he's locked up. I'm going to unlock him by pressing the depress button. And I'm going to disengage off of him. I'm back in just normal RWS mode. You can see at the bottom there. That's what happens when you unlock a target. It just goes back to RWS. From here, I'm going to go back to bore mode, and I'm going to go to vertical acquisition, sensor control switch aft. We're in vertical, and I'm going to put the vertical dashed lines on top of the Aleutian 78, and you're going to see that that's going to lock him up. Okay, or maybe not, because I think I'm actually just a little bit, oh no, there it is. Okay, I thought I was a little farther. Yeah, there it is. So that's how the vertical would lock him up. I would just put him inside the two dashed lines and he's locked up. Okay, so now I'm going to unlock him by pressing depress again. I'm back to RWS mode. I'm going to disengage, and I'm going to go back to the bore mode. And then from here, I'm going to go wide angle acquisition. Okay, so sensor control switch left. And you can see it's already locking him up because he's off to the left there. And the job of the wide angle acquisition is left to right target acquisition, right? So now I have the lock off to the left already. I'm just going to put it on him to prove that it's, oh, look at that. See, this is a good learning opportunity, okay? The radar has actually locked the friendly Hornet, okay? So this is, again, why situational awareness is important and why you should know what range to use where, okay? Because it locked up the Hornet, if I just let the missile go, I would have taken out a friendly here, okay? So when you have a friendly flying right next to a hostile there, maybe you shouldn't be using wide angle acquisition, right? You should maybe just use, I'm going to unlock him. Maybe you should just be using the bore side acquisition to make sure you lock up the right guy, right? So that was a good little demonstration there. I'm glad that happened. I'm going to unlock him. And now, so we did wide angle and vertical acquisition through the bore mode of the AIM-7. So I'm just going to do it through guns now. Okay, so I'm going to select guns instead of AIM-7. And I'm going to put the guns into vertical, sensor control switch down, or sorry, aft. So I'm in vertical acquisition for guns. I'm going to put the Aleutian 78 into the dash lines. And you got to keep him there for just a second. And now he's locked up. And I got guns on him. Okay? I'm going to once again disengage him by pressing depress. And I'm going to go guns wide angle acquisition by pressing sensor control switch left. So you can see the AAWACQ show up on the bottom there, and it's already got him locked up, right? Because it scans left and right, and I have it at what's 60 degrees down there. You can see. So it was at a 60-degree horizontal scan, and it easily picked up that Aleutian 78, and I have gun lock on him via wide angle acquisition. Okay. So those are that's a demonstration of how you would lock up targets. All right, so I thought a quick review of this would be helpful again. Since you saw the modes, it might actually be somewhat helpful. This might make a little bit more sense to you. So as we said, this was the AACQ, the automatic acquisition mode that doesn't work right now. You would do that by going weapon select, automatic acquisition, and then you would have to come back to weapon select and you would go bore or gun acquisition, and then from in this mode you could go to vertical and wide acquisition, and you're free to switch between these two modes once you're here. Okay, so that's just a real quick summary there. I thought maybe this would make a little bit more sense now that you've actually seen the modes. All right, guys, I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and if not, feel free to leave a comment about how it could have been improved and what else you'd like to see. I will obviously do an updated version of this once the early access implements more features. Okay, guys, So thanks for watching. See you next time.